Hello, everybody, and welcome to Day 3 of the Optimus Fantasy Football Draft Ranking Summit. I am Nate Polvogt. I am here with the man who has mustard on all of his beats. Yo, it's Mr. Kevin Tompkins. Kevin, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I am the whitest person imaginable, and I do not get that reference, so I will just assume that is a good thing. Day 3, for the final day, we're nailing two positions here in our ranking summit. We're kind of combining the two because, wide receivers and running backs have a lot of depth to them in terms of the positional stuff. But quarterbacks and tight ends are not as, they're certainly important, but just not as much depth. You're not getting into, if you're getting into tight end 60, there's an issue. If you're even getting into like quarterback 35, you might want to reevaluate things, but we'll get into the leads with each position. I'm excited.
Well, like you're talking about, like it's not as deep. I mean, you start one quarterback on every NFL team, right? Most teams roll out one fantasy relevant, maybe if we're lucky, tight end. But it's important to go a little bit deeper in these because we do have situations, especially at tight end, guys like Will Dissly, who all of a sudden out of nowhere, if he's not on your radar and you're not paying attention to the fact he could be relevant, you might not think to pick him up before he has a 20-point fantasy game. So we're going to go deep. It's just kind of what we do, right?
It is,
We're going to start with quarterbacks, and this is an interesting set of rankings because we've got some rookies who people really believe are going to be good. And good to a level where maybe they're fantasy relevant. I don't know that I agree. We've also got some quarterbacks like Bo Nix. What are we going to do about Bo Nix? Second year, Denver's improved offense. Let's get into it. Might as well, right?
Let's just get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
Let's hold on. We got to do some adjusting here for the folks at home here. Why is it not showing the top part?
It's not showing the top part.
What is going on here? We had no problems.
No problem earlier.
The first 2 days, but now that we got, all right, we'll do that. It's better one. Look at that. We're okay. We kind of got it now. I think we're good. Let me just shorten it up a little bit here. All right,
beautiful.
And we'll save the tight end for later. All right, we're good.
Let's get into this here. So let's start. I very highly doubt that within the top 3 to 4 that we're going to have much difference here. So why don't you go ahead and give me your top 5 quarterbacks, then I'll throw you mine and we can talk about these guys here as a group because I think we're going to be pretty similar here.
Yeah, my number 1 is going to be Lamar Jackson. I know that Josh Allen has been pretty much the consensus guy. When you look at the offense, when you look at what the Ravens have done on offense, just the massive shift that they've gotten to on offense, number 1 in EPA per play, but above that, number 1 in EPA per pass. That's been because of Lamar Jackson. You add in the rushing component. Lamar Jackson, 10.15 air yards per pass attempt, by far leading the league last season. Lamar Jackson provides the efficiency you want with the rushing upside that you need to be the top quarterback. And then if you want to just parse it by the pass catchers, I will certainly take the Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, any of those guys, the newly signed DeAndre Hopkins, over the Buffalo contingent. And while you'll probably get more rushing touchdowns out of Josh Allen, you're going to get more rushing volume. You're going to get more yards likely out of Lamar Jackson. And then you're going to be getting the efficiency in the passing game as well. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I know it can be a decision for fantasy managers with the number 1 quarterback. For me, it's not close. If I could, I would put him in a tier by himself. But I do have him in a tier with some other quarterbacks. But Lamar is far and away my 101, my top quarterback.
Yeah, I hear you. I've got Josh Allen at 1. I just feel like there's a little bit more upside to Allen. But it really is a toss-up. So I've got Lamar Jackson at number 2. So between these two guys, I mean, if I have the first overall pick, I'm probably going to lean Josh Allen. I like the heavier passing attack on the Buffalo side, even if his receivers suck. And we'll get into even at tight end, I'm not pleased with this receiving core. But yeah, I mean, I really do feel like these two can be interchangeable. They're going to finish so close to each other this season. It's not going to matter which one you take in the end. Who's your number 3, Kevin?
Number 3 is Jayden Daniels. What he did last season, you look for these transformative players at the quarterback position, and your franchise is set for the next decade or so with a guy like Jayden Daniels in tow. He lifted the boats in this, and the offense, like as far as like personnel, not great. Like Terry McLaurin is a good receiver. Zach Ertz has been around forever, it seems like. But you were also working with Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown and Noah Brown for a little bit there. You were working with some pretty poor in terms of compared to the rest of the league receiving talent. But Jayden Daniels was able to make that work. Not just with his legs, but being able to be efficient with the deep ball. Like he established an immediate rapport with Terry McLaurin. So the fact that he is going to be ascending, and he was a little bit above league average in the air. Like the quarterback stat that I love is air yards per pass attempt. That's really going to correlate with what you want. You want guys that are going to be passing downfield. You don't want a lot of the dink and dunk guys. Unless they provide something that, you just can't ignore, like rushing upside, certainly. But Jayden Daniels was 13th, certainly well above league average in air yards per pass attempt. And then if you look at the EPA stuff, Washington was 6th in EPA per play, and then per pass attempt. They were also 6th, or tied with the Packers. So I do like from the efficiency standpoint, and efficiency is the name of the game. You want guys to be able to maximize every single pass attempt that they get, even if Washington is not going to be passing the ball 650 times. You can always depend on the legs of Jayden Daniels to make things go, and then just the burgeoning efficiency and just his overall leveling up. Because we're going to see Jayden Daniels up at the top of quarterback fantasy rankings for a long time.
Yeah, I've got him at 3 as well, Kevin. So we agree here. I like the addition of Deebo Samuel, even if I don't think he's super fantasy relevant, like we talked about yesterday. I still like the addition of the veteran. I think it's good for Jayden Daniels, and especially what you said, considering what he did last season with Noah Brown, De'Ami Brown, like just a mess. The receiving core, they still got Terry McLaurin. It's a toss-up who's going to be on the outside with McLaurin. It could be Noah Brown, could be Luke McCaffrey. We're not quite sure at this point. Neither one's super exciting, but what Jayden Daniels does on his own is enough. QB3, as I think he could be QB2. I think he could hop Lamar or Josh Allen into that QB2 slot this season. We'll just have to see. But I'm with you here. Jayden Daniels is just elite, and he was so fun to watch. And you've got to feel good for the Commanders fans, long-suffering Washington football fans. Now, I'm going to go, my number 4 is Jalen Hurts. And this just kind of, what Jalen Hurts is. You get a ton of rushing upside. You get efficiency in the pass game. Even if they're not throwing the ball a ton, what he does with his legs is enough. QB4, I don't think you can really argue with that. We're both got Jalen Hurts there. Now, I don't know if there's a whole lot to talk about here because we all know why he's there. He's an elite level quarterback, and he will be for the foreseeable future until the wheels fall off. What about number 5, Kevin? Who do you have there?
Well, I was just going to say, to add on to the Jalen Hurts stuff, we know, this offense runs on efficiency. We know the tush push is a thing, so that's going to help out Jalen Hurts. I know my Packers decided they wanted to see, what other teams they could get on the Survivor Island to put up their notes to get up and vote against the tush push. But I do think, and I've talked about this with the last couple ranking summits with the running backs and the wide receivers, that I do think the Eagles are going to pass a little more. That's going to help a guy like Jalen Hurts, where we talk about any sort of meaningful uptick in pass attempts is going to be great for them. And Saquon Barkley, what always has been will not always be. I don't think that Saquon Barkley is going to put up another 2,000-yard season. It's in the cards, it's in the range of outcomes, but
sure.
what are the realistic chances that happens with all the variables in the NFL, health, just game to game stuff? It's a game of chaos. It's a game of variance, and not everything that happened before is going to happen again. So I do like Jalen Hurts to be able to get an uptick in pass attempts. It's only going to help, solidify that floor, plus the rushing upside, plus the Eagles are going to be an absolute wagon in terms of scoring points. And it all starts with Jalen Hurts. So he is the end of this tier for me here. And starting a new tier at quarterback, I don't quite like it, but it's a big tier gap from the Russian quarterbacks to get to a guy like Joe Burrow. We know that the Bengals are top 3 in pass rate expected the last 3 seasons. He gets all his guys back with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, all signed to new contracts. That offense is pretty much unchanged with Chase Brown at running back now. Yeah. The offense is going to be a stalwart. They're going to be awesome. We can pretty much set your watch to this offense in terms of probably 4,500 passing yards, flirting with 30 touchdowns, probably more. And then just the fact that they're going to be eschewing a lot of the run to be able to get Joe Burrow to pass. And the defense isn't that great. So that's almost like the best case scenario for a team. The Bengals want to pass. They don't have a great defense. They're going to have to pass to stay in games. And that's only going to benefit everybody in that offense. So just from a volume standpoint and from, some efficiency standpoint, Joe Burrow has always been one of the better quarterbacks in terms of, certainly air yards per pass attempt, 6th in the league last season. So, Joe Burrow, you really can't, it's splitting hairs, but it's also a little weird to put a non-running quarterback so high in the rankings. But when you have an offense, a passing offense that is as bankable as the Bengals, it's hard not to put him that high.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Burrow was QB3 last season. And we know how slowly it started out for this team offensively, but then he just exploded. You can't discount it. Even if he's not the rushing type, having him at 5 makes sense to me because you know what you're getting out of this Cincinnati offense. Again, like you said, they're going to throw the ball. They've got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They've got Mike Gesicki. Plus, nothing really changed. Like you said, they've got the same offensive line, the same parts and pieces. You don't have guys coming in that need to relearn the offense. You don't have to teach them, cater to them. You can keep doing what you've been doing. And that's always good for any team, having that consistency. And for Burrow, 5 might be his floor, I think, this season. I don't think he finishes lower than QB5.
But I will say on the same token, I don't think he has QB1 or QB2 upside just because the Russian component is so vital to being the top quarterback in fantasy that you absolutely either you put up Peyton Manning 50 touchdown, 5,000 yard numbers. That's what you have to put up to be quarterback 1 if you're not rushing.
Yep. No. And I mean, his ceiling's probably, like you said, it's probably QB3 if he has an outstanding season. So, and I'm with you with Burrow at 5. Then this is where I think maybe it gets a little fun. I got Baker Mayfield at 6.
So do I.
I love this offense. I love the addition of Emeka Egbuka. I know a lot of people are like, why did they bother? They've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Well, looking to the future of the next 3-4 seasons, now they're locked down at wide receiver with a guy on a rookie contract. And for Baker Mayfield to add another weapon to an offense that was already phenomenal last season, Baker Mayfield was QB4 last season. I think he's going to continue that. I think QB6 is kind of a median range of outcomes for him. I think he's somewhere between QB4 and like QB8 or 9 this season. But at a QB6 value in drafts, I'll take that all freaking day, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Let's go because I think this is where we're going to start to diverge a little bit. Who you got at 7? I'm curious.
Number 7, Kevin, I have got Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
Again, I love this offense. He showed up last season. I believe Goff on the season last season he was QB6. Again, what's really changed in this offense, right? They got Isaac Tesla, which we don't know how he's going to slot in. They still got Jahmyr Gibbs. They still got David Montgomery. They still got Amon-Ra. They still got Sam Laporta. Their defense is mediocre. They're going to be trying to score a ton. Jared Goff was just a points hound last season. I can't see any reason to rank him any lower simply because nothing changed on this team. We know what this offense is going to be. We know how good they're going to be.
Right. The only variable is Ben Johnson, but because it's such a veteran laden team, this team is not going to change their identity immediately. So, just like, we talked about teams not really changing what they do. They didn't change their personnel really. Lions are in that bucket. You know, the Bengals we talked about are in that bucket. The Bucks are in that bucket with Baker Mayfield. So, you know, number 7, I have a little bit of a change up. Justin Herbert. Look, the Chargers at the second half of last season started to really get in their bag of the passing game. They were a primary run first team. Their rush rate was very high. Their pass rate expected was very low. They were starting to look like the Eagles until they hit their bye week in the middle of the season. And then they started passing a lot more and in more, you know, in different situations as well, really pumping up the pass attempts, really pumping up the pass rate over expected, to the fact where the Chargers were 10th in EPA per pass attempt. In the Greg Roman offense, that's almost unheard of, because you have, you know, the quarterbacks that he had a younger Lamar Jackson. He's had like Colin Kaepernick. That's fine, but he hasn't had a passing quarterback like Justin Herbert. Now gets Ladd McConkey. They drafted Trey Harris. They have Quentin Johnston. They have, you know, they added Tyler Conklin as well. Like, I think that this offense knows that they know they can run the ball. They drafted Marion Hampton as well and added Najee Harris. Great. But they also have to pass the ball, and Lou's exactly right here. Harbaugh figured out they needed to throw to score points in the second half, and it showed. That's what you have to do in today's NFL. You can't Mike McCarthy ball and get into a 24-7 lead and then run the ball every down and then punt on fourth and expect to hold the lead. You can't do that. Like, fortune favors the bold. Aggressive offenses will be rewarded more often than not. I know the Chargers have been a meme the last few years, especially with like Brandon Staley, who is as risk averse as it gets. And we saw that come to fruition in week 18, week 17.
17,
yeah, it was not great, Bob. But Justin Herbert, he was also, I'm pulling it up here, tied for 5th with a 9-yard ADOT, tied with Brock Purdy and Bryce Young, believe it or not, in throwing the ball downfield. Average net yards per pass attempt, Justin Herbert was 8th. Like, even though this Chargers offense has like the I don't want to say stink, but it has like the reputation of, all right, it's a Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense. We know what they want to do. They want to run the ball, but they can pass the ball with efficiency. Now that they have year 2 of Ladd McConkey, adding Trey Harris, adding some more weapons, I think the passing game becomes much more of a complement to the run game than people anticipate.
I don't disagree with you. I think the addition of Trey Harris, people aren't talking about enough. I don't have him ranked like I believe that, but I do believe it. I just need to see it. But with Justin Herbert, so you made a point here that they figured out at a certain point that they had to throw the ball to score. That apparently happened around week 10. From week 10 on, Justin Herbert was QB8. He averaged 19.3 fantasy points per game from that point on. Look, if we get that kind of production out of Justin Herbert this season, which I really do believe we will, QB7 isn't, or QB8 isn't a bad rank. Sorry, QB7 isn't a bad rank. Like, I'm completely okay with that. I've got him a little bit farther down. But not egregiously. I mean, we're kind of in the same range here with him.
And he runs enough too. Like, he runs a little bit to where you're gonna be able to get a boosted floor. Like, he is like Tannehill-esque in terms of he's not a statue, but he's not Lamar Jackson either. Like last season, actually his career high in rushing yards, 306. Doesn't seem like a lot. You know, he'll give you a handful of touchdowns too, but you know. What if he gets 350 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground? Like, if you get that and then you get 4,300 yards and 28 to 32 touchdowns, you're looking at a top 5 quarterback.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the pathway is there, 100%. All right, Kevin, who's your QB8?
QB8, another little change up, but I believe Caleb Williams.
Woo.
Yeah.
I don't hate this. I don't hate this at all.
This is a bit closer to the ceiling projection for Caleb Williams. But when you're looking at all these quarterbacks, I mean, you're really splitting hairs because I think they're all bunched up to the point where I think you can make cases for 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks to be in this kind of range of fantasy rankings, the bottom half of the top 12. So I'm going to go with the offense that just added Ben Johnson, that just added Luther Burden, that just added Colson Loveland, that are getting their guys in there to add to DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. We'll see what they do with the running backs, if it's going to be DeAndre Swift leading the charge in week 1 or if it's going to be somebody else. But other than that, the offensive environment there just got a massive upgrade with Ben Johnson scheming. I'm very interested to see who kind of plays the roles of like the Amon-Ra St. Brown, and obviously who they're going to prioritize between Colson Loveland and Cole Kmet. But we don't have to make that decision with the quarterback. We just get the guy that's going to be distributing the ball to all of these guys. So this is the easy part. If you want to buy in on the offense, on the Bears offense this season, and you don't want to have to make a decision between, do I want to draft DJ Moore or do I want to draft Roma Dunze? Which Bears tight end do I want to draft? Do I want to navigate the minefield of the Bears running back? If you want to make the decision easy, just get Caleb Williams. You know, you can get him probably in redraft in the beginning of the double-digit rounds, and you're going to get the number 1 overall pick, who last season had to wade through some coaching stuff with Eberflus gone, with Shane Waldron being way over his skis. Yeah, and then I was getting to that, Lou. I promise. Let's not talk about the Bears without talking about the middle of their offensive line. Adding Joe Thuney, who might be, Joe Thuney might be the free agent MVP when all is said and done. Like, he is in line to be the free agent MVP if this Bears offense takes the steps that they, that we're looking for them. And obviously, I am looking for them to do just that when I rank Caleb Williams as quarterback 8.
Yeah, I've got him a little bit lower. First, he's still within my top 12. And only because I foresee a little bit of growing pains, and I love that. Love that from Evan. I think there are going to be some growing pains in this new Ben Johnson offense. I think you got 3 new interior linemen, but we can't not talk about that part. That is so huge, not just for Caleb Williams, but probably for DeAndre Swift in this run game, Roshan Johnson possibly. I think Caleb Williams at some point, probably next season, he's a top 5 guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I see him progressing to, being a quarterback we're talking about in that top tier. I don't think this season he quite gets there, but I think he gets real damn close in this offense. I'm excited to see what they do, but mostly for Caleb Williams to have time in the goddamn pocket, Kevin. Like, that's just, this Bears line on paper might be a top 5 line in the league right now.
And I did not even talk about his rushing, where he had almost 500 yards and 0 rushing touchdowns. You're going to get more rushing touchdowns out of Caleb Williams because this offense is going to be, just on variance. I mean, look at Cole Kmet. Remember the year he didn't score any touchdowns? You're like, well, every single fantasy analyst, that's ever had a podcast or a microphone in front of them was talking about touchdown regression. Until Trey McBride scored his touchdowns at the end of the season, everybody was like writing their show notes from February to August saying Trey McBride touchdown regression. So let's do that with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams rushing touchdown regression from 0 to what? 4, 5? That adds 24 to 30 points on top of what you already have.
Yeah, I mean 24 to 30 points. That's a whole tier jump.
Yeah,
Kevin. That's a whole tier jump. Yeah, I mean, look, you don't rush for almost 500 yards as a quarterback and not score. Very rarely is that ever going to happen. So there's got to be some positive regression here. 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. And while I've got him lower, I don't have this guy lower. I've got Kyler Murray at 8. Just because he can run. I mean, it's really, I don't trust the kid. I don't trust the kid's arm. We talked about this yesterday. I think he should have played baseball still. He could have been a nice middle infielder for the soon-to-be Las Vegas A's.
For the Sacramento Sutter Health Park A's, yes.
Yeah, right. But you can't deny the rushing upside. This offense isn't exciting. And we talked about this yesterday. I mean, outside of Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison, what is there to be excited about? You've got an aging James Conner, Trey Benson, who may or may not see a jump forward this season. It depends on what the offense wants to do. And that really, for the way that we talked about Kyler Murray coming into the league, for him to be at QB8 in fantasy this deep into his career, I like it's kind of a disappointment. He should be a top tier guy. We should be talking about him in the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks. But here we are, QB8, and I'm higher on him than you.
Yes, you are actually much higher than I am. I will say, not to spoiler alert anything, but Yeah, the Cardinals are the chronic underachievers of the NFL, and that's just taking out Trey McBride. Obviously, Marvin Harrison is part of that, but having those two weapons in your offense, and you can only muster 21 touchdowns and not even 4,000 passing yards. Like, the rushing stuff is fine. I think he had almost 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. At some point, you have these weapons, and you have to be able to use them properly. And not only that, but use them consistently. I have been a Kyler Murray slappy for the last couple seasons, and I think it's finally gotten to the point where I just can't put myself through the mental anguish anymore with him. So my slappydom has transferred 1-for-1 over to Caleb Williams, as evidenced by his ranking.
Yeah. Oh, no, I hear you. Oh, yeah, and eventually this rushing upside is going to fall off for him, right? It's going to happen. Maybe it's this year. Maybe QB8's way too high. He was QB10 last season. I'm one ahead of consensus on him. And maybe I'm trusting the rushing upside too much, Kevin. Let's get to number 9 here. Who do you have at number 9, my friend?
It is Bo Nix. But not Box Nix. Bo Nix.
Not Box Nix.
Easy for me to type. By the way, the quarterback, the NFL player who is tied with, I believe, Ty Law, the lowest amount of characters in a name for an NFL player. Little fun fact there. Yeah, look, we're not just a football, old guy podcast. We are informative as well. But look, nobody thought Bo Nix could throw the deep ball. That was the big brouhaha about Bo Nix and what could he do in the NFL. And what does he do? He has the 3rd most deep pass attempts in the NFL last season. So he shut us all down, almost 4,000 passing yards. That offense was efficient as hell through the passing game, because while the Broncos passing game was basically Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims splash plays, he still ended up with 29 touchdowns. And then not only that, 400 rushing yards and a quartet of touchdowns. So look for this offense to get a little bit. I mean, Sean Payton, for all his faults and for the fact that if he told you the sky is blue, you wouldn't believe him, still knows how to manage an offense. And the environment is pretty good. I know he gets kind of hung up on his guys, as evidenced by Lil Jordan Humphrey and Adam Troutman and Lucas Kroll, all former Saints. They even, tried out the Traquan Smith bags, and that didn't seem to fit. But they love their former Saints. They love their big body dudes, like the former X receivers. That's why they brought in Pat Bryant in the 3rd round too, who, we all are wanting him to be the next Michael Thomas. Everybody cannot shut up about Pat Bryant being the next Michael Thomas. We all want to make that a thing. And then when he gets 21 targets this year, we're like, oh, well, I guess we'll go back to the well. But Bo Nix is able to capitalize on that and then some, showing a lot of efficiency. And the Russian component too. It's going to be I don't know if this offense is going to ascend quite to the point of, I don't know if he has much improvement over what he showed. He can get to 4,000 yards. 30 touchdowns is probably his ceiling, unless he turns into Peyton Manning. The Broncos were below average in EPA per pass attempt last season, despite how well Bo Nix did. So there's some growing pains a little bit there in the efficiency standpoint. But other than that, Bo Nix can lift the boats, and that's kind of what we want with our quarterbacks. And then he has the rushing component on top of that. Like I said, all these quarterbacks between 8 and 13, they're all kind of interchangeable for me, just because of varying, offensive kind of issues and rushing ability, etc. But yeah, I think Bo Nix is a fine fit here.
Yeah, I've got Bo Nix at 9 as well, Kevin. I'm here with you. 4 rushing touchdowns, 430 yards on the ground. He had 92 rushing attempts, 29 passing touchdowns, but he only threw 12 interceptions, and 4 or 5 of those were in his first 2 games.
Yeah.
I think he does take a little bit of a jump forward. I think this team got just a little bit better. Cortland Sutton looks more confident as a wide receiver 1 on this team. Troy Franklin, his college teammate, I think maybe takes a little bit of a bump forward, not necessarily to fantasy relevancy, but I think it does help Bo Nix here. He was QB7 last season, so we're ranking him a little bit below where he finished, but that's okay because I think this team got better at running back with RJ Harvey. I think they have more of an identity now than they did last season, getting rid of Javonte Williams and just kind of locking into Estime, McLaughlin, and Harvey here. So we're probably going to see a bump in some of the rushing volume, which I think hurts him a little, which is why I've got him back at 9 instead of 7. But I still think that's a really good spot for him. And he's a guy that you can rely on starting as a QB1 every week as a fantasy manager.
Yeah, and I will also add too that they did add Evan Ingram, although we'll talk about him in the tight end portion of this stream, so stay tuned for sure. And also, I think very underrated, they added Drake Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga on defense. Easy for me to say. And then added another corner, in the first round as well. So maybe some of the stuff on defense that could, I'm a little worried that could reduce the amount of times that he can, needs to drop back or rush. But, it's still a good offensive environment. It's still a good overall team that's going to compete in the AFC West. And I don't think they're going to get blown out of games. So Bo Nix at 9. We're both in agreement.
Yep, we love it. I'm going to stay within the division here for my number 10. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. It's just hard to bump him out of the top 12 because of the player he is. He produces points. The Kansas City offense was disappointing last year, and I don't believe he finished the season as QB 11, but he came on late, and I feel like this is just what we get out of Kansas City, right? They kind of slough through the first half of the season, they get through their bye week, and they turn on the Jets, and they're still somehow undefeated, not turning on the Jets before the bye week, which is the frustrating part of Kansas City, but Rashee Rice is healthy, like we talked about yesterday. You've got him ranked very high. I've still got him in my top 24. You and Herms are on the same page with him. I think a lot of people are starting to get on the same page. I like their backfield a little bit better this season. I like Brashard Smith, as we had discussed when we were doing running back rankings. This is an improved offense. And if Travis Kelce really is pissed about how poorly he played last season, to the moon with Kelce. I don't necessarily have him ranked quite that way, but that's really good for Patrick Mahomes. QB 10 might be his floor. I mean, I think QB 6 to QB 10 is probably a reasonable range for Mahomes this season.
Yeah, if Travis Kelce doesn't want to be pissed about how he finished last season, maybe he should stop running like a podcaster, because that's what he is right now. He is a shell of his former self, but he is in the Jason Witten mold of catch and fall down. We call him Zach Ertz Gerald. That's pretty much what Zach Ertz was in Arizona, where he was the slot guy and just caught and fell. That's pretty much what Travis Kelce is right now. He'll put him in the slot, he'll catch the ball and fall down. But that's fine because they've got other weapons. They've got other guys that can stretch the field. They'll likely have Rashee Rice for the full season. We do not operate under the Taylor Swift ruining Travis Kelce ethos here on this podcast. But I respect her opinion. I respect the freedom to be able to say things like that, Jamie. I will say that. But yeah, the offense, I mean, they're the Showtime Lakers. They're playing for the playoffs. They can go 75% in the regular season and then turn it on. It almost got him another Super Bowl. They did end up running into the Eagles buzzsaw. But, give me Patrick Mahomes. Like, what his floor is, and he can turn it on at pretty much any moment. And he put up almost 4,000 yards last year, 26 touchdowns. He's in his mid-stage Aaron Rodgers era where he didn't have to do a lot. The defense carried him through a lot of the season to where he wasn't needing to put up 38 touchdowns and 4,800 yards. Like, he doesn't have to do that because that's not asked of him to put the entire team on his back. So while it kind of stinks because we know Mahomes can do that and doesn't have to, this is the floor. If for some reason he needs to turn it on, we know he's going to be an absolute value there and can be a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get on to it now. I know these next two are going to be different because these are players we've already talked about. So I'm going to give you my 11 and 12 here. I've got Justin Herbert at 11. Then I've got Caleb Williams as my 12. And we've already discussed these guys on my end here. So I'm curious to hear your 11 and 12, Kevin.
11. This is the Keith Fleming special, by the way, because, I mean, it just makes so much sense. It's Justin Fields. We know it's going to be pure. You're going to get almost 1,000 yards on the ground out of Justin Fields. And, you know, when you look at what the Jets have behind him at quarterback, look, it's Tyrod Taylor. And yeah, while he's like a fine backup, I don't think anybody's expecting Tyrod Taylor to get on the field this year unless Fields gets hurt. So I'm totally fine with just slotting Justin Fields as an automatic top 12 quarterback, you know, for the rushing. And then it's almost like anything you get passing wise is bonus. If you can get to 20 touchdowns, if you can get to even 3,400 passing yards, like that's bonus. That cements you in the top 12. And then the Jared Goff is my 12th quarterback. You know, we talked about it. Obviously you have much higher, but I still do think he's a worthy starting quarterback. You know, not much has changed. We talk about that, like we talked about the Bucs and the Bengals. It's really just Ben Johnson. But since it's a veteran backed squad, I don't think much changes in terms of how they operate their offense. So it's only going to benefit Goff.
Yep. I'm with you on Justin Fields. I've got him at 13, so perfect transition here. And yeah, with his rushing upside, you just kind of have to slot him in here to this top 15. I am a little worried about it being the Jets because it's the Jets, and we know what the Jets are. They're a joke. So
we're talking about a new regime. We're talking about a new regime, though. We're out of the Nathaniel Hackett.
Ownership, but same ownership.
Right, this is but Aaron Glenn is one of the hottest, was one of the hottest coordinator, to head coach kind of things. And you got to think if he is coming over, the Jets are one of the most toxic franchises in terms of like new head coaches going there. And I get that, but I feel like Aaron Glenn wouldn't go over there unless he had full, autonomy to do what he can and do what he needs to do without a lot of meddling from Woody Johnson and whoever. So I have some confidence in Aaron Glenn that he'll be able to operate how he wants to without a lot of like hands in the cookie jar.
All right. I mean, and that's fair. And I've only got him bumped down 2 slots from where you have him. I don't think there's really a big difference in the way that we're valuing here. Now for number 14. Well, no, sorry. We got to hear your 13.
Oh, we talked about it already. It's Kyler Murray.
All right. Well, there we go. I mean, that's not a massive difference, 8 to 13, kind of in the same tier-ish. My 14 though is Brock Purdy.
Okay. And so is mine.
He's just one of the most boring quarterbacks. Like there's nothing really sexy or exciting about what Brock Purdy does. He's just Mr. Automatic. I'm going to say this and people are going to yell at me, but he's like Tom Brady light, kind of. He doesn't have necessarily the powerful teams and the stellar coaching of Bill Belichick and the system around him that Brady did, but he has a lot of the same similar qualities. I mean, he's a slow white dude who can get the ball down the field. That's exactly what Tom Brady was. He just was smarter than everyone on the field. And Purdy isn't quite there, but I really can't take him out of the top 15. We don't know what this receiving core is going to be. We don't know if Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy all season, but he made it work last season with all those injuries, even with Trent Williams on one leg at this point now, and he was on 1.5 last season. I think Purdy will be a consistent high-end QB2, but I don't think he can get into that QB1 range, and I wouldn't even think about putting him that high.
I'm not sure if you've looked. How many rushing yards do you think Brock Purdy had last year without looking?
I haven't. I'm going to guess 50.
323.
Wow.
There's some rushing up, and he had 5 touchdowns. I had him in King's Classic last season, so.
Oh, that's why you know.
Well, I mean, I have it here, but I wanted to know if you knew that. I mean, just the fact that Brock Purdy has sneaky rushing upside. He's been very efficient with the 49ers. He's got really good weapons. In terms of EPA per pass attempt, the Niners were 9th last season. Right there with the Eagles, Chargers, Chiefs. Good company to be in, certainly well in the top 12. Not only that, Brock Purdy, 9-yard ADOT. When you talk about average net yards per pass attempt, Brock Purdy was 6th in the league over Joe Burrow, over Baker Mayfield, over Justin Herbert. When you're talking about air yards per pass attempt, Brock Purdy was 8th with 8.18 behind Sam Darnold, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. So he's right there with all those guys. And I absolutely think, I know Evan is here, is pretty good. No, yeah, I think he's fine. And then he has the weapons to boot. And not only that, but we have some pause with teams on, that have good defenses. What are the pass attempts going to be per game for a team like that? Because if they're going to be up by 10 points and they're going to shut everything down and run the ball, but the defense is not going to be as good this season. I mean, look, they finished 3rd in the NFC West last season. They're going to have to rely a bit more on the passing game. We'll see what Christian McCaffrey's health looks like, but that's going to be a net positive. You get a trending down defense. You get a bunch of weapons still on the offense. I mean, the offensive line is not going to be as good, but that's going to help Brock Purdy get the ball out a little quicker to some of those other guys like Ricky Pearsall or like Juwan Jennings. Look, 3rd and Juwan will still be a thing. I mean, set your watch to that. But yeah, I absolutely think that Brock Purdy is good enough to certainly be in the top. I've said this a couple times already. He could be as high as like quarterback 7 or 8. All these quarterbacks are kind of mishmashed here. Big blowout.
Well, he was QB6 in 2023, played a full season, had a full set of weapons. If this team can stay healthy this season, I think QB6 might be his ceiling. I could see him creeping up into there. But if they don't, and as we've seen this San Francisco team do, they do not like to stay healthy. I think 14 is probably a fair range for him. Kevin, who do you have at 15?
It's a guy that I've been maybe thinking about a little bit more, where I got to find some room for him. And I do think I'm actually going to move one of the guys I've already ranked down for him is Dak Prescott. Now that he has George Pickens in tow, I don't think we're going to get to like the 2021 Cowboys where he was like the ultimate jam in DFS, where that dude was like locked in for almost 50 pass attempts a game. Like, remember those fun days of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup and rookie CeeDee Lamb, where they had to pass because they had no they're passing to Tony Pollard, and Ezekiel Elliott was like, we're getting to the point where like he's probably done or close to being done. So they had to pass. We're not going to get to that point, but the fact that they have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, you still have Jake Ferguson there. You still have like Jalen Tolbert's not a bad receiver, but he was clearly miscast as a second wide receiver. And even last year, so was Brandon Cooks. I mean, I know he was injured, but he was like, he's on the Robert Woods path to irrelevancy very quickly. That's why he's no longer on the team. But that's why they went out and grabbed, George Pickens. Granted, you probably didn't need to make the splash. You did, but we work with what we have, and they have him. And having those two where George Pickens can play on the outside, take some of the deep balls, let CeeDee Lamb play flanker in 2 wide receiver sets, and then play the slot in 3 wide receiver sets, only going to help a guy like Dak Prescott gather up some volume. I know he's always had a lot of the rushing touchdown stuff. I think we're going to really see that dry up. Now you can't rely on Dak Prescott as much in the rushing game. He's never been a rushing quarterback anyway, but at least, early on in his career, he could rely on like a handful of touchdowns. I don't know if you're going to be able to get that, but anything you do get from him in that kind of realm is a bonus. And, can he stay healthy? That's a big thing too. But if Prescott can put everything together, he's right in there with a lot of the guys we ranked ahead of him.
I agree. I've got him a little bit farther back than you, but you're making a case where I feel like now I'm going to have to move him up in my rankings. I like what this Dallas team is doing, despite me hating the Dallas Cowboys with the passion of 1,000 suns. I really do like what they're doing. I think if Dak is healthy, he could be a top 10 quarterback this season if he stays healthy. And if this offense shakes out the way it's supposed to, we'll see what happens with it. Now, for my 15, I went from the last pick in the draft to the first. Trevor Lawrence is my number 15. And this is kind of I I had him lower heading into the day today. Went through my rankings one last time, and I bumped him up about 4 spots because this is a put up or shut up year for Trevor Lawrence, as we've been talking about across all of these shows.
Yep.
He has to produce this season. He has all of the parts. You can't blame it on coaching. You can't blame it on Doug Peterson. You can't blame it on, I can't even think of his name, Urban Meyer. You've got Liam Cohen now, and we saw what that Liam Cohen offense was in Tampa Bay. They throw the ball a lot, which is good for this offense because they've got Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne, and people are talking about Jarquez Hunter possibly being a thing, which is just out of my brain. I can't understand that. He was like,
wait, do you talk about
Bashal Tutin, which maybe he will be, maybe he won't be, but this is going to be a pass-centric offense, and I had to bump Lawrence up to 15 just based on the volume I think we're going to get out of it. Plus, Trevor Lawrence can run, right? Like, he has legs. You don't love to see it, but he had 339 yards rushing in 2023, 4 rushing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns a year before. If he plays a full season, you can get 400 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns out of this guy. That'll bump him from QB 15, 16 to like QB 10 to 12.
Yeah, he does have 2 legs. Many are saying. Yeah. It's put up or shut up for Trevor Lawrence because it's really a lot of his upside is going to hinge on how they use Travis Hunter as well. I almost said Justin Hunter, the former Pittsburgh Steelers 6'5" wide receiver from 2011, if you remember him. I think he was drafted by the Titans, I believe, as well. Anyway, a lot's gonna rely on Hunter. A lot's gonna obviously Brian Thomas is pretty locked into that offense. How Brenton Strange does because he is in the perfect situation. We'll talk about him in the tight end rankings. To where they ended up bringing in 2 blocking tight ends, guys that do not catch the ball, Johnny Munt and Hunter Long from the Dolphins. So he's in like the perfect situation where it's very hard to think of anybody that could take any targets from him. They did release Gabe Davis, who will probably either end up on the New York Giants or, he seems like a Denver Broncos ass. He seems like a Denver Broncos ass wide receiver.
Don't put that on us. Do not put that on us, please.
Or he could be a Steeler. He could be a Steeler. Who knows? That could be
on us either.
I mean, let's see.
I don't like any of the things you're saying here, Kevin.
Let's get you don't have to look. You don't have to like the things I'm saying, but you need to respect the freedom I have to say such things.
Oh, I respect it. I respect it. I haven't kicked you off the stream yet, have I? Here we are.
I'll kick myself off.
No, let's not do that. I don't want to talk about this alone. Seems boring.
Look, the Broncos fans are chiming in. They wouldn't mind a Gabe Davis.
All right. I mean, he's not going to see the field much in the Denver offense anyway, but I really think he either ends up, like you said, in New York, or I could see him in New England. He seems like a real New England-ass wide receiver, if you ask me.
I mean, they already have the most New England-ass wide receiver in Matt Collins, so,
that's true.
Double your pleasure, double your fun, I guess.
Exactly. Now let's get on to 16, Kevin. Who's your 16?
Well, we're almost coming up on 50 minutes, so let's. I'm gonna put my next 3 up there.
Let's do it.
Well, because we're starting to get into, not cutting time here. Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, C.J. Stroud. My next 3. Drake May, I guess it's not quite the slappy play because they have added Stephon Diggs. They've added Will Campbell, left tackle. Everything you need to do for a young quarterback. You get him, at least a stopgap weapon for now until you can draft one or acquire one, however. But at the very least, they're giving him opportunity to be able to grow. And it depends on what Stephon Diggs are getting. In his first year in a new team, he's typically very good. But he might accelerate the timeline because he's also 47 years old. Now he's 32, I think. But look, Drake May, I think, with the rushing upside, with some of the arm talent that we've seen, the fact that he was working with probably the least athletic pass catching group, since World War II, definitely didn't help him last season. But they've upgraded, they've added a little bit here and there. So I think he takes a step up. Trevor Lawrence, for the reasons we talked about, that it's, nut cutting time for him, put up or shut up with Brian Thomas and Hunter and all those other guys. CJ Stroud, I'm very interested to see how he bounces back in the post PFF Bobby era of Texans football. Who even is their OC right now? I have to go look. It's Nick Caley, and Nick Caley. And if Nick Caley walked up to me and punched me in the face and told me his name was Nick Caley, I wouldn't even be able to tell you. Looks like he was a Rams staffer, tight ends coach, and passing game coordinator last season. So look, if you can get some McVay stuff out of him, if you can get some condensed personnel, we've seen this with Kevin O'Connell. We've seen this with Zach Taylor. We saw it with Zach Robinson a bit last year in Atlanta. If we can get some of those principles and scheming guys open, scheme Nico Collins to holy hell. Like do that, and then figure out what you want to do with Christian Kirk and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Figure out what you want to do, but play like three guys, in 11 personnel. And then, you have your Higbee and Dalton Schultz. That's basically 1-for-1. I could see CJ Stroud bouncing back this year. Obviously we have some of the stink from last year because of the entire Joe Mixon centric offense, but I think there's bounce back here. I know we kind of overcorrected a little bit. There's that potential because we were ranking him as like quarterback 6 last year. Now I have him as 18. But I think he probably lands somewhere in the middle if everything breaks out right for him.
Yeah, I had him at QB5 last season, and now I've got him out of this. He's not even in my top 20, which is interesting. I take that back. He is in my top 20, but he's barely in my top 20. I like the idea of what you're saying here. If they condense this offense down, I feel like that might have been part of his problem. There were so many parts and pieces in this offense, and it kept changing because you were getting injuries. And just this team, I don't feel like really knew what they were last season. But now you've got Christian Kirk, you've got Nico Collins, you've got John Mechie maybe, but Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. But if you can condense this offense basically to Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Joe Mixon, and Stroud, with some Dalton Schultz peppered in, and that's where they center the targets, that's going to be good for Stroud. If they do that, he's way higher than QB 18. I think he's a top 10 QB. But I'm not willing to hang my hat on that because I want to see how he rebounds. Like you were saying, that's the important part. Can he come back from an awful season last season? Well, in our opinion, an awful season last season.
Yeah, and you're going to have to do that without Laramie Tunsil as well. So that certainly adds a wrinkle to that. John Mechie has not been released yet, by the way. He is still on the Texans roster.
He's listed as their slot receiver.
Yeah.
On their depth chart. So, all right. So my next 3, I'm going to go Jordan Love at 16, Drake May at 17, and then I've got Dak Prescott at 18. Everything you said about Drake May, completely agree with. We don't need to rehash that. I am on the Drake May train. I think he could take a significant bump higher than QB 16 this season if everything shakes out with this offense. And if Stephon Diggs stays healthy, I think that will be a big part of Drake May's success. There are obviously other parts in this offense. You've got 100 receivers who were born before World War II, it seems, on this offense. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And obviously I agree with you on Lawrence here at 17. Jordan Love, though, at 16, this is also a put up or shut up kind of deal for me. I feel like he's got to produce this season. They went out and they got a first-round wide receiver for the first time in franchise history, it freaking feels like. You do that for a quarterback that you feel like needs that asset. He's got to be a top 20 quarterback this season. I just feel like he has to be. And if he doesn't, that's a problem for Green Bay. I mean, they invested a lot of time in this guy and a lot of money in this guy. If he's not going to be a top 20 quarterback, and while it's fantasy that we're talking about, that's a fair barometer for how they're faring in the NFL. If he's not a top 20 in fantasy, I just don't know what they're going to do about the quarterback position moving forward. Maybe just not worry about it and try and run Josh Jacobs like they did last season nonstop, but I don't think they will. So I got Jordan Love at 16. I feel like I'm obviously higher than you are on him. I'm one spot below consensus. So I guess we're both a little bit lower on him.
A little bit. I'm much lower. We'll check in with that in a few here, but Yeah, Jordan. I mean, with Jordan Love, I'm just the efficiency metrics are there for Jordan Love. It's just the passing volume is not. Um, and I'm not sure the fact that if they can even trust him, because I think if he still played 17 games, like he played parts of 15 games last season, with 425 pass attempts, for Love himself, for the Packers, and I can't pull it up right now, but anyway. Actually, yeah, I can. How many team pass attempts they have? I think they were probably a little over 500. Not much over. 479 team pass attempts. Like, that's not good. Like,
that's 100 less than Jordan Love had in 23.
Exactly. So they found something that works in this offense, and they're going to have to thrive. Love's fantasy numbers are going to thrive on efficiency. And while you have that, you still need like the raw pass attempts to be able to capitalize on that. And he doesn't rush that much, and nor should he, especially after, some of the lower leg stuff last season. Yep. So that was probably out of the cards, but you're probably looking at like 200 to 250 rushing yards in a good year for Jordan Love. I honestly think, even as a Packer fan, I think he's one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL. I know we've been waiting for him to kind of to even get on the field. And then not only that, Green Bay had to pay him big money after one season, which was by your own making, because you pretty much held him out for 3 full seasons thanks to Aaron Rodgers. So they are still feeling that. But as far as a fantasy asset, I think he's entirely overrated. They're going to have to up the pass attempts considerably. And not only that, they really don't have a target earning wide receiver. Like, the closest thing they have is Dontavian Wicks, who, by the way, trivia question, led the team in passes in targets last season.
Yes, he did.
76. So if you want to, that's a trivia question. Jamie's right. Love is overrated. I prefer lust. Look, that's why you have Tinder and Hinge and all these other apps to go on and do that with. That's what they're made for. But, we're not swiping right on Love, clearly, based on these rankings.
No, we're definitely not. All right, Kevin, let's get all the way up to 25 now. Let's get crazy here. We're running up on an hour.
Let's do that. So CJ Stroud, Matthew Stafford, I have as the next quarterback here at 19. Jordan Love, I'm actually surprised I have him that high after just literally talking about him and just crushing him. Bryce Young, Geno Smith, JJ McCarthy, and Tua, who is the start of the last tier of quarterbacks for me. I mean, we haven't talked about a lot of these guys. Stafford, the same as always. He's got 2 good wide receivers, and now it's Devontae Adams and Puka. Sean McVay, who I trust implicitly, trust him with my life to scheme an offense. I mean, who knows? Maybe year 17 is the year that Matthew Stafford finds rushing upside. Who knows? But probably not. Maybe if he gets those robot legs. But other than that, if Kelly Stafford wants to sign off on that for Matthew and extend his career, we can't rely on any rushing upside for Matthew Stafford. It's all going to have to be through the air for him. And while they could probably do that through the air, you obviously have capped upside there. Jordan Love, we talked about. Bryce Young looked like a real boy at the end of mid to end of last season. So that gives some renewed hope for the Carolina Panthers. They added Ted McMillan to Jalen Coker, to Adam Thielen, to Xavier Legette. They have Jatavius Sanders at tight end. Like, it's a good young little group. They have Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Like, that's a sneaky offense that is like fine and can produce. But it's going to have to be Bryce Young lifting some of those boats even more to be fantasy relevant. Geno Smith, I almost feel bad because we've talked so much about the Raiders and how this offense could be sneaky. But I think it's going to be good, probably more for the pass catchers than it is for the quarterback. Obviously, we're going to talk about Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. We like Jack Besh as well. We talked about him yesterday. But I do think that just based on just some of the volume stuff, Ashton Genty is now involved there. Like I said, it's going to be better for the pass catchers than it is for the quarterback in Geno Smith, but he's probably a good bye week guy. JJ McCarthy, we have to wait and see with him. Same boat though with Kevin O'Connell. I trust him implicitly to scheme this, this offense and get JJ McCarthy as like the new quarterback whisperer to get him going like he did Sam Darnold last year. And then Tua is like fine. Like he's like Matthew Stafford-esque when he is on the field. But that's how often he's going to be on the field. That's what I worry about with him. And I think that's everybody's concern with him. But I think he's 1 foot out the door right now. I think they go out and either get a quarterback or draft one next year. They can't keep playing this game with Tua. And it's basically one weird game of roulette with his concussion history.
Yeah, it really is. I've got him ranked at 20. I had CJ Stroud at 19. Simply, I'm banking on him being healthy all season. If Tua stays healthy, I feel like this is kind of just like a median spot for him to land QB 20. He could be as high as QB 16, could be as low as QB 22 or 23. There's nothing that exciting about his game, right? Like everything else in this offense is so exciting, and Tua's just kind of there. So I really can't. 20 is about my ceiling for ranking him, and I will not be drafting him.
Yeah, you don't get bonus points for being left-handed.
No, I got screwed on Tua in King's Classic last year. So I had Tua and Jordan Love at one point. It was not fun. Then at 21, I've got Matthew Stafford for all the reasons you said. Consistency, no rushing upside. Then at 22, I've got Michael Penix, 23 JJ McCarthy, and 24 Sam Darnold.
Okay.
I think
new names in there.
Well, with Michael Penix, it's very simple. I like the parts around him. I think he can elevate some of these guys. This is the most dynamic quarterback they've had in Atlanta since Desmond Ridder, so that's real exciting. And I love his arm talent. 22 is probably his ceiling for me. I'm assuming that he's going to do really well this season. I am drafting him as a back-end QB2, and I'm okay with that, which is why I've got him here. Could he climb higher? Sure. I want to see if there's any level of rushing upside to Michael Penix, though, because I don't think there is. He's more of a pocket guy. He has a hard time getting outside to begin with. So then with JJ McCarthy, this is simply the weapons around him. You look at what this team has. Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson. They're powerful. So I'm assuming that he's just going to get numbers based on what this offense is and the type of offense they're going to run. And then at 24 with Sam Darnold, I have measured expectations for Darnold in Seattle, but I still think he's going to be okay. I don't think he's going to be nearly as good as he was at points in Minnesota last season, but I still think he's a back-end QB2, and he's rounding out my QB2 tier.
Yeah. And I'll just add my final 6 here. I mean, we talked about Michael Penix. He's there. Sam Darnold at 26. Anthony Richardson, and, the rushing upside is there, but he's probably one of the least polished passing quarterbacks we've seen in a very long time. There's a lot of work to be done, and I would not be surprised if Daniel Jones comes for the man very soon. But we know, when he's out there, the dude can put up 25 points per game just based on his rushing, getting 2 touchdowns, 80 yards, and then anything else you add with your arm. I'll throw Jackson Dart in there at 28. That's I think that he gets the Malik Neighbors bump for me. Just based on the fact he gets to throw to him a little bit and whether he gets to usurp Russell Wilson. And I have Cam Ward at 29, and I actually have Russell Wilson here at 32 because look, it's still an up in the air quarterback room. I think Russell Wilson starts a few games, seeds the way to Jackson Dart. But I know that the Brian Daboll-led Giants are going to be fighting for their professional lives, especially when you look at the schedule they have to start off the season. We talked about that last night on the schedule reaction show here on Optimus. But who's your final 6 here before you get into tight ends?
All right, so 25, I've got Geno Smith. 26, I've got Bryce Young. 27, I have Mr. Cameron Ward. 28, Anthony Richardson. This is a fun one. You're going to love this. I got Tyler Shuck at 29.
Oh, dear God.
And Russell Wilson at 30. Tyler Shuck's going to be the starter in New Orleans, but QB 29. I mean, nobody's drafting him unless you're like, well, I've got an extra roster spot. Let's see how this goes. That's why I've got him at 29.
Yeah, you are right. Nope. You are right. Nobody is drafting him.
No, and that's why I have him ranked where I have him ranked, because you shouldn't be drafting him.
No.
These guys from 24 on, for me, they're like, let's see what happens with them. Yeah. I don't want to put him outside my top 30. You're hoping you get a little something from them.
You're hoping you get a good outcome.
Yeah, right, exactly. And just outside of that range, I've got Dart at 33. I've got Milrow at 34. I've got Aaron Rodgers at 31. And I'll tell you why. Because I think he's going to play for Pittsburgh.
We'll see. He's sure dragging it out.
And that makes him one of 32 quarterbacks, right?
Many are saying, yeah.
Many are saying.
Joe Flacco, Shuck, Pittsburgh quarterback, and then like Milrow and Sanders. That's like my top 35.
What's crazy to me is I've got Shedeur Sanders at 38. I am 7 spots below consensus on a guy who was a 5th round pick and isn't even guaranteed to make the goddamn team.
Yeah. I mean, all we know, that guy is the emergency third quarterback come week 1.
Yep, exactly. Well, just real quick here, let's flash up those top 24 for everybody to look at. We will be posting these on social media later today so that you can roast us, of course, because we love that. It's our favorite thing. Tell us how stupid we are, and then we'll tell you why we're not. It's just kind of what we do. And with that, Kevin, let's move on. We've got tight ends to talk about, my friend.
Yeah, man. Let's and we can't talk about tight ends without talking about our thumbnail, who I'm pretty sure you have it at number 1 as well. Correct?
Oh yeah. Yes.
I have to make sure. I don't want to assume.
I think what's funny was when you go and you look at ECR, I think his highest ranking is 1 and his lowest ranking is 2. But like most people ranked him 1. Somebody was like, I'm going to make Trey McBride number 1.
Well, that's the thing. That can happen. Like the NFL is weird where that can happen, but I don't see a world in where Brock Bowers plays even 15 games and is not the overall tight end 1. Like
Brock Bowers have to miss 4 or 5 games and not be tight end 1 in that offense.
Yeah. The fact that we really should have seen this coming with Brock Bowers, the fact that he was an 18-year-old on a national championship team at Georgia that featured over a dozen NFL players, current and, that are, whether they're on a roster or starting, whatever. We're talking about George Pickens. We're talking about Len McConkey. We're talking about James Cook. Darnell Washington, right on down the line. A lot of NFL players were on that team. Brock Bowers came in fresh off his senior prom, led that team in touchdowns, receiving yards, receptions, led that team to a title, and kept it going. And then did the exact same thing as the best rookie season for any pass catcher in NFL history. Look. And now gets the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, guy who put up a 70% completion percentage last season, and Geno Smith on an offense that, mind you, now has Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator, famously running massive amounts of play volume like he did in Philly. Like, if this team runs like 70 plays per game, Brock Bowers is going to have like 180 targets. Brock Bowers would finish in the top 4 if he were a wide receiver, and you can get this guy as a tight end. Like, it boggles the mind how, I can understand variance and, things happen in the NFL. Saying Geno Smith gets hurt, but the thing is, we're not Johnny Fortune Teller. We're not, predicting injuries at all for anybody. That's not what we do. That's not a way to go about things. But Brock Bowers, in most ranges of outcome, is going to lap the field. Even our second tight end, who mine is Trey McBride, I'm assuming is also yours as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's got to be Trey McBride.
Yeah.
He's the wide receiver 1 for all intents and purposes in Arizona. And like Andrew Cooper says, you got to follow the volume, follow the target, see where they sit in the pecking order. Trey McBride's wide receiver 1. He's a guy you want.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Yep. You want the top 2 targets on a team, and Bowers is the clear top target on the Raiders, and McBride I would say even with Marvin Harrison is at worst the clear second target on his team. So even if Marvin Harrison comes back up, you're still looking at a very healthy role for Trey McBride. So I think this is going to be consensus. I mean, honestly, when you're looking at consensus, I mean, number 3 is George Kittle. Is that the same for you?
No, I've got Sam Laporta.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically for me, here's how it goes. Tier 1 is Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Past that, we go into tier 2. It's guys like Laporta, Hockenson, Kittle, Kelsey, names like that. I've got Laporta at 3 ahead of Kittle because I like the Detroit offense better. That's all.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I like Kittle. Even though, we talked about the 49ers, there's not enough football to go around for like a lot of those guys. I think Kittle still has the leg up over a lot of those wide receivers to where I feel like he's going to be more, without, Brandon Ayuk's hurt right now. Obviously when Debo was there, they made him a focal point, but I think Kittle is now the focal point of that offense. And the one over like, Juwan Jennings and Pearsall and whoever, to where he's going to be prioritized just a little bit more in terms of stretching the field over the middle versus some of those other guys. And the fact that the 49ers defense is not as good. The quarterback, Brock Purdy, is going to be able to throw the ball a little bit more. Laporta has got lost in the shuffle a little bit, and that's what concerns me, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, obviously Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery as well. So that's kind of where I have Laporta a little bit lower, but not much lower. When we talk about some of these other tight ends, obviously we'll parse that out, but who's your 4 and 5?
So my 4 is TJ Hockenson and my 5 is George Kittle. And again, I just find the Minnesota offense to be more dynamic than what San Francisco has, but you can make the case for all 3 of these guys to be my 3, 4, or 5.
Right. And I have Hockenson also at 4, and we just flip-flop Laporta and Kittle because I have Laporta at 5. I mean, Hockenson, like we talk about all the time with the Vikings, it's a lot that's going to hinge on where we at with JJ McCarthy. But I'm still very confident in that being definite positive for all the guys involved there. And then, we just talked about Laporta. So we're already into tight end 6. Who you got?
Tight end 6, I've got Mr. Travis Kelce, the catch it and fall down guy, because he's going to catch it a lot and fall down even more. And I just think he falls into being tight end 6. Looks like we're the same here. I mean, same reason for you why you've got him at 6.
I mean, we know the volume will be there no matter, as long as he is like upright and not like getting weekend at Bernie's down the field. He is going to get 100 at minimum 100 targets and probably at minimum 80 catches, whether that's going to end up being like 750 yards or it's like 950 and then a half dozen touchdowns. Like, we're still looking at, we're looking at end stage Tony Gonzalez here, who is still incredibly relevant fantasy wise in Atlanta and even in his last couple seasons. But look, Travis Kelce is a Hall of Famer. He's still a massive part of this offense. He's like the heartbeat of this team in terms of what they want to do. So, yeah, Travis Kelce, you could see him fall off, and I wouldn't be surprised. I just think that they're just still going to pepper him. He's still going to run that little 5-yard hook and catch, 80 balls. That's his bread and butter right now.
Well, the fun fact, Kelce hasn't had under 100 targets since 2014, his second season in the league where he only had 87 targets. Second season in the league, 87 targets. That was the last time. Yeah. So, and I'm with you. He's just going to produce. He could fall off. Very well could happen. I'm not going to bet on that. I'm just not. And that's all there is to it. Who's your number 7, Kevin?
So I will just say, I'll preface tight end 7 with the fact that we have a very strong top 5 in terms of tight ends. And I think it's like a mini tier with Travis Kelce. This is where you're going to get a lot of shake up here with the tight ends. A lot of these guys kind of mix in with each other to where, like just like the end of the quarterback, the first 12 quarterbacks, quarterback 7 through like 13, you can, change up any of those guys and you wouldn't blink. So I actually have, and it might be a little bit of a surprise, it's David Njoku.
Ooh.
Here. So I am a little. Joe Flacco did very well with David Njoku when he was there, and that was 2020. I want to say 3 at the end of that season. We know that the Browns have Jerry Jeudy. We know they have Cedric Tillman. I do think that, with Flacco, tight end was the focal point. And I know Flacco, he's well into his 40s now. There's no guarantee that he's even starting. So this is pretty bullish on my part to rank him here. But there are very few tight ends that have target earning ability that I want to put up here that aren't propped up by touchdowns, that aren't propped up by, their offense, because their offensive environment can do a lot. And then if you add in the target earning component to that, that's when you get your Sam Laportas and your TJ Hawkinsons. So it's a very precipitous drop off from even 5 to 7 for me. But when you look at the tight ends in this range, and we'll obviously go through them all, but there are a lot of warts here. This is where when I'm drafting and redraft, I'm going to be prioritizing getting, excuse me, any of these top tight ends. It doesn't have to be Bowers, but obviously I prefer him just to not have to worry about it. But I don't want to have to go fishing for elite tight end production out of a guy with a lot of warts. Like, I don't want to have to dip my toe into the Zach Ertz pool and hope that he can hold everything together with duct tape for another season. Like, that's why I want to get one of these elite tight ends. But this is like the start of where you start to have real questions about a lot of these tight ends. Every single tight end going forward, there's a lot of questions.
Well, you're getting into a tier, Kevin, where the top 5 guys, top 6 guys, all the way through Travis Kelce, there's a level of guarantee for their volume. We know what these offenses are going to do. We know how they're involved. We know it's going to be there. Sam Laporta is probably only real solid question mark within those top 5. But now you're getting to guys like Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, Jonnu Smith, Tucker Kraft, where we're not 100% sure how they're going to lock into their offense or if their offenses are going to be efficient enough to bolster them into any sort of fantasy relevance. And I like you being bullish on David Njoku. I like David Njoku a lot as a player. He's talented. He's big. He's powerful. And if Joe Flacco does start, I think that could be very good for Njoku. I mean, he's 40, so we don't know what we're going to get out of Flacco, but he even looked decent last season. And I think even if you end up with a guy like Kenny Pickett starting, they hold on to him and start him. I still think that's okay for Njoku. I'm not as bullish on him, but I do have him in my top 12. But at number 7, I do have Mr. Evan Ingram of the Denver Broncos. This is a projection of the role that I think he's going to play in this offense, the role that Sean Payton has talked about, the Joker role where he's all over the field. I think we get some weird production out of Ingram, out of the backfield, on screens, deep down the field. I think he could be a top 5 tight end. As an anomaly in a weird world of tight ends, because we know how weird it can get. I think Evan Ingram's that one guy in these top 12 who could sneakily be a top 5 tight end this season in this offense.
Evan Ingram will be by far our greatest disagreement in terms of tight ends and where we have them, because I have Evan Ingram much lower outside of the top 12. I'm just not convinced that based on how the Broncos have run their offense, the fact that they run so much personnel. I mean, they were rotating 4 tight ends, whether it was Adam Troutman, Lucas Kroll, any of the other guys, Nate Atkins, and whoever, and then also a fullback, Michael Burton. Not only that, you ran so many wide receivers, whether it was Courtland Sutton, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, all these guys, and then all these running backs. 3 or 4 running backs. You were to throw Tyler Bidet in there until he got hurt. You're running 4 running backs. So the fact that they want to go with like committee approaches to all these positions leads me to believe that even though you went out to get an Evan Engram after he got cut from the Jaguars, he feels much closer to a rotational piece for me. That is probably the pass catching component because you don't have that really on the team. Lucas Kroll is like the closest thing, and he's not really that guy, but based on the fact that it's Adam Troutman and Nate Atkins, who's pretty much a tight end, fullback, H-back at this point, leads me to believe that Evan Engram is closer to being a rotational guy, a 55, 60% routes guy, than a guy that's going to be out there with Cortland Sutton. Because Cortland Sutton was the only player that I believe ran over like 65% of the routes last season. I think Vele was like the next highest. And I think Will Jordan Humphrey was, I think, close there too. But Marvin Mims didn't. Like none of those other guys, they were all just rotational pieces. Evan Engram at this stage of his career feels like that more than like a guy that's going to be running 80-85% of routes. But, you know, we'll certainly see, you know, how, you know, and that has to go with another tight end we'll talk about too, you know, and how we shake out their role. That's why we talk about range of outcomes, because you clearly have Engram at the highest range of his outcome, or at least close to it. And I have him on the other side of the spectrum.
Yep. And that's what's fun about this. It's why we have to have these summits to talk about it. Kevin, give me your 8, 9, 10.
8, 9, 10. Jake Ferguson, who I bumped up a little bit with George Pickens' trade. Actually, I did not bump up Dak Prescott like I probably should have, but I did reflect that in Jake Ferguson, who I think should see less attention. He is, you know, him and Dalton Schultz are on the Cowboys our Spider-Man meme, like pointing at each other. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what you're looking at there. But I think Ferguson's like a little better than Dalton Schultz. And I think him getting less attention thanks to George Pickens and obviously CeeDee Lamb, that's only going to help him compile some stuff as the third target, the Dallas Goedert-ish third target when we talk about, you know, if it's condensed at the top with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert's like the distant third, but third enough to where there's a huge chasm between a lot of those guys after that. I still think there's a similar kind of bet with Jake Ferguson in that kind of realm. Mark Andrews is my tight end 9. I like Mark Andrews. I think some of the tread is coming off the tires, though. A lot of usage. He's starting to block a little more now to where he did not block very much at the beginning into his prime, which I think anytime you're out there blocking even a little bit, it's going to cap your upside. You know, we saw him kind of turn into more of a touchdown dependent guy versus a target earning guy. Can he still do it? Sure. He can have flashes. He can have games where he gets 8 targets, goes 6 for 86 and a touchdown. Absolutely. So I think that's plus the offensive environment we know in Baltimore is awesome. So that's going to help him kind of maintain some of those touchdown numbers and some of the target numbers. And then 10, Mike Gesicki, who that's a pretty big jump from consensus. But it's the Bengals offense. I have some doubts, a little bit of doubt about, because the Bengals have been rotational with their tight ends. They love running out Tanner Hudson and Cam Grandy, and for a little bit Eric All, and Trey Sample is like their blocking guy. But the fact that Joe Burrow is so adamant about wanting to get Mike Gesicki back in the offense, when he was talking about, hey, are these guys going to get paid? The guys talking about Chase and Higgins, he always made sure to put Mike Gesicki in that same sentence with those guys. So if you're already that ingrained with your quarterback, and then he pretty much ensures that you get a long-term deal to stay there. And Mike Gesicki with the Bengals, it's the best he's ever been used in his career, going back to like even the early days in Miami, where he was used as like a, you know, more of the receiving threat. He had 106 targets in 2021, but look, he had his best yards per route run season since that season, 1.6. So look, Mike Gesicki is going to end into his age 30 season this year. Granted, that's old for a tight end. He doesn't have a lot of tread in his tires. He's in a passing offense. Like, it's wheels up as long as you can shake some of the rotational stuff.
Sure. You are way higher on him than I am. That's for sure. We're not going to be talking about him for a while, my rankings. But otherwise, like Jake Ferguson, you're higher on him than I am. And I might need to probably adjust my ranking on him. That's something I might do post show here. But I've got Mark Andrews as my number 8. So we're just kind of right in that same tier with him. And I agree. It was concerning to see him starting to block so much last season. And we really saw it affect his value. Now I've got Jonnu Smith at 9. And this is, for me, when we get to this level of tight ends, I'm looking at like, okay, which guys could step into some production on accident? Jonnu Smith is one of those guys that I think could step into a lot of production on accident, because if Tyreek gets hurt or Tyreek Hill pulls an Antonio Brown, Jonnu Smith, we saw last season without Tua, he became a real big piece of this offense. I don't know why Mike McDaniel would get away from it. It was working, regardless of who's at quarterback. And then I've got David Njoku as my number 10. Not as hyped on this offense as you are for Njoku. I think they're going to run the ball just an absolute ton, but I still think he's a top 12 tight end. I mean, yeah,
I just don't see the consistent utilization of Jonnu Smith, especially like if Tyreek Hill is still there, and we have a full season Jalen Waddle, if they, use Achane. They even added Nick Westbrook-Akine, which, look, when you look at the pantheon of Dolphins wide receiver 3s, Nick Westbrook-Akine looks pretty fucking good compared to Braxton Berrios and Odell Beckham and River Craycraft. But I don't know if I quite see. I mean, who knows? He could be entering his Jared Cook era, and that's worth something. I don't want to take the plunge and get burned. So
sure,
I have him much lower on there. You want my 11 through 15?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let me pull this up here. Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Evan Engram. I have it tight end 13 outside of my top 12. For a lot of those reasons we talked about, Dallas Goedert and Tucker Kraft. Freiermuth, the Arthur Smith offense loves the tight end. Going back to, every tight end except Kyle Pitts, certainly,
of course.
I definitely have to make that distinction, certainly. But look, the offense is bare bones right now in the passing game. It's DK Metcalf and it's a bunch of role players. I even throw Calvin Austin as like a semi Marvin Mims-ish role player, who I think is fair. He's better than a role player, but he's still nobody. You can't trust his snap rate or route rate on a given week. So I think Freiermuth is still the second target in this offense. And even, we talk about pass attempts. We talk about, who the quarterback is. It's a professional National Football League offense that will still pass the ball between 470 and 500 times. Guys will get targets no matter who they are, how bad we think they are. DK Metcalf will still probably get 25% of those targets. That's probably 120 targets in this offense, if we're being honest. If we're talking 480 pass attempts, 25% of that is 120. And that's probably what DK Metcalf is earmarked for. That's going to bump up a lot of the efficiency stuff because you're getting so few pass attempts in that offense. But if Metcalf is getting that, why can't Freiermuth get 100 targets in this offense? And granted, the efficiency might not be great, but if you can get me 75, 704 to 5 touchdowns, you're already a top 12 guy in fantasy.
Yeah, I'm not there on Muth. I've got him way lower, but he very well could. That's the thing about where we're at with tight ends, because it's such a weird position. It's so hard to grade. These guys are all over the place. Tell me about Dallas Goedert though, because I have him a little bit lower in my rankings. I guess I don't see the usage. What do you see?
I think it's still the same kind of situation. The fact that the Eagles didn't draft a tight end, I think, was good for him. So I think it's still kind of the same ethos there, where it's going to be top 2 with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. Who else did they even add at wide receiver? I know they have who's the big Johnny Wilson kind of still there as like a big, massive target. They have Jahan Dotson. They brought back the ghost of Terrace Marshall. If you want to have some fun, I guess, with your 2021 dynasty rankings. But I still think Dallas Goedert is the third target on that team. And granted, he is more in the mold of like the George Kittle, only in terms of the fact that he is so valued as a blocker as well as a receiver, that he is an every down guy. So for like route-based upside, I think Dallas Goedert is still quite there, where you have some concerns about guys like even a Mark Andrews, who has Isaiah Likely there, that might not get into the 70-75% routes. You have doubts even about like Jonnu Smith, because they love using Julian Hill as like a blocking tight end. You have some doubts even about, and I talked about Evan Engram with all those other tight ends there. I don't think you have that with Dallas Goedert, where he is always going to be on the field. And, that certainly helps with like play action, because, if you're like doing a lot of like block and release stuff with Dallas Goedert, that is, and they run a lot of screens with him as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of upside for a guy like Dallas Goedert. Still, even though he's another year older, we've been playing the same game for however long, where Dallas Goedert finishes between tight end 9 and tight end 14. But it's a good spot for him, where he's still in a massively efficient Eagles offense that can score a lot of points. And who's to say Dallas Goedert can't get in on some of that and maybe have some touchdown variance? He scores 8 touchdowns and goes like 60 for 70 or 700 yards.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, I don't hate it. Like I said, I'm not like way far off of him, but there's been such a range of where people have him in their rankings, where either some people are really high on him, some people are really low on him. I keep hearing people talk about Greg Calcaterra like he's going to really cut into his volume significantly, and I just think that's insane. It's absolutely insane to me. I'll go ahead and throw up here my 11 through 15. We have got Tucker Kraft at 11. I have got Colston Loveland at 12.
Ooh.
Jake Ferguson at 13. Mr. Kyle Pitts at 14. And then I've got Goddard at 15.
Oh, Kyle Pitts, man.
I know.
Who is 15? Goddard?
Goddard's 15, yeah.
Okay. Like, we did not talk about Tucker Kraft.
Well, that's why I was okay jumping ship, because I've got Tucker Kraft at 11 here, and you've got him back at 15.
Yeah, explain that one.
There's so much ambiguity in this receiving core. It's Matthew Golden, and then what? We don't know what they're going to do with the rest of that receiving core. And Kraft just saw a lot of volume last season. I like him at tight end 11. I like him better than Loveland, Ferguson, Pitts, Goddard. I think he sees more volume. I think there's a little bit more consistency there. Maybe a little bit more touchdown equity from Kraft as well.
Yeah, Kraft was a huge beneficiary of Luke Musgrave being out in the beginning of the season, where to the point where he just basically snatched that dude's lunch, and is not. I don't know if he's going to give it back. I don't know what they're going to do, and I think that's an issue too. He literally just talked about how we're able to kind of bank some of these route numbers for these tight ends. I think Tucker Kraft has some question, because Luke Musgrave was drafted ahead of Kraft, remember, by the Packers 2 seasons ago. So it would not surprise me if this was back to a 60-40-ish split. I think Kraft is a better receiving option, and that's what we want for fantasy. But I do think Luke Musgrave is probably a better blocker, probably a better all-around tight end. So we'll see how they divvy up everything between those 2 tight ends. But I think there's a little bit of question in terms of Tucker Kraft. How much of the field is he really going to see? If he runs like 89% of the routes in week 1, I don't think the question is there anymore. But I think that's kind of in the back of our minds, because especially if we have a healthy Luke Musgrave going into that. So that's where I lean with Kraft. But he was very touchdown dependent. A lot of his points relied on touchdowns and not like a lot of volume. He had that one random catch, that 60-yard catch down the sideline. I think that was against the Eagles. No, it wasn't against the Eagles. But I remember that on the near sideline. He had a 60-yard catch and rumble. That was the highlight of the season. But other than that, it was pretty much touchdown based, fantasy scoring.
He had 7 touchdowns. He only had 70 targets, 50 catches, under 800 yards receiving. So yes, the touchdowns have to be there.
But that's where we're at with all these tight ends. That's the thing.
Exactly. With my number 12, Colston Loveland, I see this offense being so dynamic and exciting, and I see Cole Kmet being the odd man out here. I think Colston Loveland takes over most of those snaps, the passing snaps. And this is going to be a pass-heavy offense. With the parts they have at running back, I think the volume's going to be there, and I think the touchdown equity could very well be there as well, which is what we're looking for in these guys. And then with Kyle Pitts, this is a wing and a prayer, man. I just really want this to work out. And I don't see why it's not working out. I think maybe Penix targets him a little bit more. I think maybe we see a bump, and we forget that Kyle Pitts actually was good his rookie season. So maybe we get back to something closer to that. Again, not a top 12 in my rankings, but he's a guy that I think is feasible to be inside the top 12 at the end of the season.
Yeah, with Kyle Pitts, and I hope Smokey Hell Nelson ain't listening to this. As a former Kyle Pitts truther, look, they're gonna have to do an archaeological dig to unearth Matt Ryan to be able to get Kyle Pitts the upside he needs. Otherwise, I don't see the path to that with Drake London, with Darnell Mooney, with, I guess, Bijan Robinson, obviously well in tow there. I think it's a tough ask. And we're looking at Kyle Pitts being the most Dallas Cowboys ass tight end in 2026 or 2027. He's going to be living his best life as the new Eric Ebron, as the new Jared Cook. But until then, we are just stuck in this holding pattern of Kyle Pitts.
Well, maybe it'll be different this year.
We can't say we didn't try.
We tried. Hurt me again, Kyle. Let's hear your 16 through 20.
All right. The hen house is shout out to Andrew Cooper. The hen house is strong with the Hunter Henry. Chigakonkwo there at 17. At 18, Zach Ertz. 19, the Rube Goldberg machine himself, Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton Schultz. A couple of Daltons there at the end of the 16 through 20. We have a top. Yeah, Dalton and Dalton. I kind of think Dalton Kincaid's a little high. Now that I look at that, I'll expand on that certainly. But Hunter Henry, I mean, he's an eat your vegetables tight end who you can always plug in. He's always good for 5 for 40, whether you get the touchdown. That's like a flip of a coin. Sometimes you end up getting the 8 catch, 8 for 80 every like 4 weeks. Cool. Nothing flashy. He does produce. It's just the offense itself that kind of holds him back a bit. Plus, he's getting older. I think he's in his age 31 season as well. Chigakonkwo, we saw a big spike last season. Whether now a passing quarterback in Cam Ward can unlock him even further. I consider him the second target in this offense. I'm sorry. It's not Tyler Lockett. It's not Treylon Burks. It's not Mason Kinsey. It's not insert, Georgia's, 7th string wide receiver that they drafted, as an undrafted free agent or whoever else they end up bringing in. It's Chigakonkwo for me. We've been waiting on the efficiency to see if that manifests into something real with him. And we've seen flashes, but we haven't seen the full thing. I think he's a candidate to be a top 12 guy by the end of the season. I'm kind of middling it right now because I think this is the middle of his range where he could be just completely irrelevant or he could be Jonnu Smith from last season. Zach Ertz, thanks to that offense, not really adding. I mean, they added Debo, but, I think Debo and Zach Ertz are kind of linked up in terms of who is going to be the second target for Jaden Daniels. But I think Ertz is going to have his moments perfectly fine. Dalton Kincaid, there's too much receiving options there in Buffalo, I think, for him to matter. They've been trying to make fetch happen with Dalton Kincaid. They need to trying to get Dalton Kincaid a reception is like plugging in an electric football machine and watching all the pieces scatter everywhere. They need to do this. They need to move this guy in motion. They need to put this guy, in the flat. They need to motion this guy into the slot. They need to do all this. to get him a 2-yard reception, a swing pass. Like, they need to do all this stuff. He seems to not be able to win on his own. And that's a huge problem for a guy you draft in the second round. So I don't think Dalton Kincaid is it. I think he's going to go the way of Kahale Warring. There's a blast from the past when you're looking at tight ends. We wanted to make a thing. Dalton Kincaid is burying himself deep into that. That or like the Ricky Seals Jones era of tight ends. Sorry, was Austin Safarian Jenkins not deep enough for you? Should I have gone that deep?
Yeah, Austin Safarian Jenkins.
At least he was good though.
He was good. Yeah, he was good. We go deep here. Deep cuts.
Yeah. Dalton Kincaid wishes he was ASJ. And then Dalton Schultz is fine. Dalton Schultz is fine. I think Cade Stober's hurt right now, so that kind of helps him a little bit in terms of he'll probably see a ton of routes. It's like the Goddard play, but with less upside because you still got Nico Collins there. You've got questions about the offensive line. So how much does he block? That's a lot of questions there, but can he be fine? And like every so often, if you need a tight end, he's going to run routes. Yeah, he can be fine.
Yeah. These guys are like when I'm streaming tight ends. When you miss out on one of those top 5 guys, you're like mid-season, you're like, screw it, this isn't working. You start streaming these guys. This is kind of the territory we're getting in here too. Schultz is great for that because he's going to have a few games and you can almost see when they're coming because you can tell matchup-wise like who they've been throwing to him against. So I like that. I like this. I'm going to go with mine here. We've got Tyler Warren at 16. Patty Muth at 17. Then I'm a slot higher than you on Kincaid at 18. A little bit lower on Hunter Henry than you at 19. And then I've got Cade Otton at number 20. Okay. With Tyler Warren, all I'm going to say about Tyler Warren is because he was a first-round pick, I can't justify having him outside of my top 20. I feel like Indy's going to use him. I don't know how much. I feel like this is kind of like the middle of the road for his range of outcomes at 16. He could be anywhere from 10 to 20, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're gonna hate where I have Tyler Warren. But we'll obviously talk about that. Cade Otton is interesting. Cade Otton is interesting because when there was literally nobody left in Tampa, he produced, and then everybody started coming back, and he like blended back. Like he's like the understudy. Like he is the offensive understudy when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are off on vacation, nursing they're at Tahiti. Like if we're talking about Marvel, Cade Otton is, happy to step in and get 10 targets, 8 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. And then when the guys are back, Cade Otton's like, happy I can help. And then he goes and runs 90% of routes and doesn't get a target for 3 weeks.
Yep. And again, I've got him at 20 because he's one of my favorite streaming options. On the weeks where you think if Godwin gets hurt, if Mike Evans gets hurt, it's to the moon for Cade Otton. So that's why I've got him at 20. Now, I want to just go 21 through 25 for you, Kevin.
All right. Colston Loveland. I just don't know if I can picture a world where he supplants Cole Kmet to the point where he's going to be a top 12 tight end. Could it happen? Sure. Unless they trade Cole Kmet, I don't know if I see it, but I can understand. Yeah. And I respect your freedom to be able to convey that argument.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
Look, we're diplomatic here, if anything.
We are.
Cade Otton.
Cade Otton.
Yeah. And I'm rethinking this because I feel like Strange is a bit low for me. I would probably put him over Cade Otton just based on what we just talked about. And then Tyler Warren. And then Isaiah Likely. And the let's see. So we talked about Loveland, Otton. Yeah, Brenton Strange, we talked about with, there's the guys behind him have never caught a pass in their life. Johnny Munt, Hunter Long. It's a perfect situation for a Strange to really condense a lot of the tight end targets in that offense. Tyler Warren. I know that Shane Steichen has come out to say that they want to use him as an every down tight end. I just don't know what that is worth on an offense that has Anthony Richardson throwing the ball, possibly Daniel Jones. And then not only that, but you still have your Mo Alley Cox. You still have Andrew Ogletree. You still have Will Mallory, who you've rotated in and out of, and guys that have gotten 20 to 30% of routes each of the last 2 seasons. Like, I don't know how you just shut those guys all the way to 0 for Tyler Warren. I understand because it's a first round guy, but based on what they've done historically with the same offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter, the same head coach, I don't know how you go to 0 on those other guys for Warren, at least in the outset. That could happen middle of the season, but even if it does hit, even if Tyler Warren is running 80 to 85% of the routes in an offense that has a lot of questions about the quarterback, that could potentially be the 4th option in terms of Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. You know, they love to use the ancillary guys like Alec Pierce, Adonai Mitchell. They've still got Jonathan Taylor. Like, where does Tyler Warren fit in through all of this? And I think Steichen's going to be fighting for his job a bit here too. I think the entire staff is honestly, I think they gotta shake things up here. But I do wonder where Warren fits in the pecking order, and I could be totally wrong, and he could be like, you know, Sam Laporta, and I'm eating crow. It wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. But the fact that, you know, you have all these guys there, and they haven't used a tight end like they want to since Jack Doyle, and that was 2019. So it's been a long time since they've had that type of tight end, and I just don't see it manifesting the way they want to from the outset.
Yeah, what's tricky, and I hear what you're saying. There might not be a ton of volume for here. That's a very crowded room, and you were completely 100% correct. But the difference between tight end 20 and tight end 10 last season was 40 points. 40 overall points. Not much, right? So there isn't much of a difference when you go from 10 to 20 with these tight ends. I can see Warren being tight end 24. I can see him being tight end 4. That's what's so crazy about this. Because if they really do feed him, he will be a top 10 tight end. If they do what Steichen says they're going to do, but he won't be, and they won't do it.
Yeah, I should have really leaned into the bit. I should have had Theo Johnson ahead of Tyler Warren as well, considering that was the pecking order at Penn State, where look, and that's another thing is the Tyler Warren, you know, the dominator stuff and the fact that he couldn't even get on the field to do what he did last season until his final season when Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson, both starting tight ends in the NFL, the fact that he couldn't do that until those guys were gone is a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, I'm going to give you my 21 through 25 now, if I may, sir. I've got Zach Ertz at 21, Cole Kmet at 22, Mr. Mike Gesicki at 23. Then I've got Dalton Schultz at 24 and Isaiah Likely at 25. I'm getting into my like dart throw tier here in tight ends because these are guys they're not on really anybody's radar. Zach Ertz is a vet. I feel like he might get overtaken by Ben Sinnott at some point this season, the Trey McBride arc, where
I don't know though.
I don't know either. I don't know if Sinnott has it. That's what I want to see if Ben Sinnott really has it at the NFL level to be that kind of pass catching tight end. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to see. But then with Cole Kmet, there's a chance they run out 2 tight ends and the work gets split. And at that point, Cole Kmet's 22 and Colston Loveland is 21. So, and then with Gesicki, I love him. I love that man to death, and I want him to be a top 10 tight end. I just don't see it. I think there's too much going on in that offense. Dalton Schultz is Dalton Schultz, and Isaiah Likely, we saw him snag a bunch of work from Mark Andrews last season. I think that continues this year.
Yeah. I mean, Likely, he is like the real only tight end handcuff in terms of if something happens to Mark Andrews, he can slot. I mean, look at week one. Week one, you know, Isaiah Likely was out there. He caught 2 touchdowns. People in like the FFPC drafts were taking him in tight end premium, by the way, like the 2nd round. Like it was wild to see because some of those drafts started after the Thursday game. So yeah, absolutely hilarious. But on the Zach Ertz thing, we talk about Ben Sinnott. Like, remember, he was the fullback of the year in college in his senior season at Kansas State. And the fact that he was a 2nd round pick and couldn't get on the field over John Bates is very concerning to me. So the one argument you could say is that, well, maybe he is like more of a direct backup to Zach Ertz than we consider, because John Bates is more of a blocking guy. And Sinnett's not like really that, and probably, is probably following the more traditional tight end path where it does take a couple seasons to get to that, because he had been like, he is your prototypical like H-back. Like Sinnett can play in the backfield as a fullback, probably learning some of the inline stuff as a tight end, to where, if he can play like the inline Dallas Goedert role and Zach Ertz can play the Zach Ertz role like they did in Philly, like that's probably what they like their wish upon wish can be for like him in year 2. But still, then I don't think Zach Ertz gives up a lot of the market share to a guy like that unless we really see a marked improvement, not even just like getting on the field passing situations, but just getting on the field in general.
That's fair. Again, I'm really hoping it because I liked Ben Sinnott a lot. And that's about the end of it. Let's get your 26 through 30. Let's get the people out of here, Kevin. We're approaching 2 hours.
Kyle Pitts, God, it pains me to write that. Cole Kmet, Will Dissly. I know they just added Tyler Conklin, but I'm not sure that Conklin is anything more than a role player. And I think Dissly showed a little bit last season that gives him the benefit of the doubt in that offense. They didn't draft. I mean, okay, technically they did draft. They drafted my boy, by the way, Oronde Gadsden, who is a full-on project, by the way. Like, let's get that right. He has the best receiving chops of anybody in that tight end room, but he is going to have to be a non-blocking guy, like slot guy right out of the gate. He's basically a wide receiver that his position is tight end. So
he can't block.
No.
He can't block at all. He's terrible. Yeah.
But I think Will Dissly gets some of the benefit of the doubt as far as showing just a little bit last season, I guess, versus a guy like Tyler Conklin. If Dissly just looks overmatched, then, this can all change, certainly. 29, Tyler Higbee.
All right.
Who Higbee is going to see, he's going to get routes. He's going to get those random games. Like, he's thinking about it, there's not much difference between him and Dalton Schultz, honestly. Like, he's going to be on the field a ton. He's, like, fine for what he is. There's just a lot of weapons around him with, like, a good enough quarterback. And he's gonna probably a better and best ball tight end too kind of guy. But, he's fine for like a fill-in guy. And then 30 is Jatavian Sanders. And I know they brought back, the Panthers did. They brought back Tommy Tremble. But I think the receiving stuff for the Carolina Panthers is a little too hard to ignore, where I can see Tommy Tremble, while he can be a receiving guy, probably fits more into like the Ian Thomas mold of a guy that's just going to be out there blocking a little bit more than he is receiving, and then using Sanders, who has clearly been the better receiver of the two. When we've seen Tremble out, Sanders has been very useful in fantasy. So just hoping that he can get a little bit more market share on the field versus a guy like Tremble. If that's the case, you can see Sanders jump up probably 2-3 tiers into like the teens, where he's like a streaming guy.
Mm-hmm. So I've actually got Jatavian Sanders at 26. So I'm with you. I like him over Tommy Tremble. We saw what he could do in the passing game last season. So I'm with you there. I've got Taysom Hill at 27.
Slappy, so slappy.
Slappy. Just, dude, this New Orleans offense, you've got Kellen Moore in there as the head coach. Who's their quarterback? Probably Tyler Shuck. But then also probably a lot of Taysom Hill and some weird packages because Derek Carr is gone. And because they're not going to add another quarterback. It's Hayner. Or
what if the tight end? What if the quarterback is Taysom Hill? What if he's been in the room the whole time?
Well, then he's tight end one, baby.
What if the call has been coming from inside the house the whole time?
Oh, that's it. I mean, it's a distinct possibility, I suppose. They just run out with Taysom Hill. Then I've got Chig at 28 because I have a hard time investing in this Tennessee offense right now at any level. With a rookie quarterback, I can't. Then I've got Jawan Johnson at 29. Again, such a weird situation there. That team tends to lean on him. And while it's a new head coach, these coaches come in and they see those things and they know. And then at number 30, I have Noah Fant, like a crazy person. But I think Darnold might pepper him a bit. Like, the talent is there for Fant. He just has never been in a situation where he actually got to be even remotely featured. There isn't the Cooper Kupp, JSN, past that, there isn't a whole lot. I think he could slot in and get some targets in this offense. But again, tight end 30 is a dart throw. And I was mixed between him and Will Dissly because I've got Dissly at 31. So couldn't decide.
Yeah, Noah Fant for every single season since, the earth was created in the heavens and the universe, has been the X-Files tight end. We just want to believe. Obviously he came out of tight end U in Iowa, along with TJ Hawkinson, and that just has not manifested to the point where we can get like consistent goodness out of him. Yeah. But you might be getting Elijah Arroyo there, buddy. So get ready to learn that.
That's true. Oh, I love Elijah Arroyo. Tight ends take a couple years. He feels like a couple years tight end. Maybe we see something out of Fant this year.
Yeah, and he's still got AJ Barner, who was like plenty used last season. So that could be an interesting tight end room where Noah Fant could fall out of favor very quickly, especially if they're trying to get younger guys in there, because Barner's going on his second year. Obviously, Arroyo is a rookie. So that could be maybe a changing on the guard there. We'll see. Maybe they use Arroyo as the F tight end and they use AJ Barner as the inline guy. Maybe they run more 12 personnel now that they have, obviously Cooper Kupp can play flanker. They have however they figure out they want to do it. JSN, Cooper Kupp, MVS, those guys, and then maybe play more 12 personnel and run the ball a little bit more and kind of use Arroyo as like their de facto slot guy. Who knows? Anything can happen. I'm just yapping to yap right now, but
no, but I hear you. I like
we've
Elijah
been doing it for 2 hours at this point.
I know, man. It's what we do. I'm going to put these rankings up on the screen here. These are our top 24 PPR tight end rankings for your redraft drafts. We'll be putting these again on social media so you can mock us. Lou's going to get them thrown up on all of our platforms. We will be putting this show onto an audio-only version on Spotify, so if you want to listen to us again, make sure you check that out. While you're there, make sure you follow us. Same goes for here. Please like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Join Kevin, myself, and Mr. Keith Fleming tomorrow night for the Friday Q&A. We're very excited for that one. Kevin, this ranking summit has come to an end. It has been a blast. We've talked about a lot of players.
We have talked about 180 players. Actually, no, wait, 60. Yeah, 180 players.
180
we talked
players.
About in 6 hours time. So get ready. Your shorts feed is going to be plenty.
Insane.
Yeah, it's going to be stockpiled because those are going to be coming fast and furious there with a lot of the stuff we've talked about. But look, I mean, we're in May. We're sickos. We talked about 180 players. We got a lot more coming down the pike, so I'm excited.
Yep, this has been great, and thank you to everybody who has watched, tuned in, listened, wherever you are. We greatly appreciate it. Again, please make sure you subscribe here. Follow us on your favorite social media platform. We're going to be here all off season. We've got a ton of exciting stuff going on. Make sure to join us tomorrow night for that Q&A. For Kevin Tompkins, I am Nate Polvogt. We will see you tomorrow.